PTF and JK back with you on the In the Money Media YouTube channel. We've got a new top 10 list for you folks, but we're going to do something a little bit different. It's not a wholesale change, very similar to the list from last week. So rather than do it as a countdown, we're going to take a who's in, who's out approach. We're going to talk about the prep races from last weekend. We're going to talk about some news and notes and look forward to what's coming up as well. Stick around, JK. We do have a new member of our top 10. Burnham Square makes his debut on this list after running a career best 90 buyer speed figure in the Holy Bull. This was a horse we were both looking forward to see how he was going to make out on Saturday. He made out very well in the end. How impressed were you with Burnham Square?
I was pretty impressed. I mean, I think that the one thing that I'll stick to is that, this is not an Ian Wilkes thing. Ian Wilkes is a great trainer, but he's not one that just grabs you by the throat every 3-year-old year with some nice, talented horse. This is kind of outside of his realm of what he typically does. The horse winning by 9 in a maiden race, and then coming back and confirming that and winning the Holy Bull. And he's doing it in pretty fast figures, too. I think this is a horse that'll continue to progress, continue to improve, and I love the fact that he's got that Liam's map, right? I mean, Liam's map is one of those horses that his second place finish in the Whitney back in the day is still, to this day, one of the best second place finishes I've ever seen. He absolutely ran around there, and he's just so talented. And another thing that's funny about Liam's map, if you look at his Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, Javier never used a stick in that race, and he won as impressively as he did. I like the pedigree here. I think this horse is going to continue to train on.
His progeny to this point haven't gone great distances, but I'm not sure that matters because there haven't been that many opportunities. There's a chance looking at this pedigree, sire and dam, that he'll top out, mile and an eighth-ish. But you look back a generation, you see Unbridled Song and Scat Daddy in there. But the biggest thing for me about this horse and this type of pedigree in the Derby these days, JK, reminds me of an interview I did with Brad Cox a couple of years ago for our Kentucky Derby Monster Pods, where he said, in this day and age at the sale, they look for pedigrees that suggest a mile, mile and a 16th, mile and an eighth, and they believe with modern training they can get them to the mile and a quarter. I think that certainly might apply with Burnham Square. You also mentioned Ian Wilkes. I don't know that he's ever had a Derby runner, but the school he comes from, the old school that he comes from, being Carl Nafsker, certainly trained Derby winners, or a Derby winner anyway. I have no doubt if Ian Wilkes had the right horse, he could do so as well. Any notes there about that Brad Cox idea, and how do you use pedigree in this day and age when trying to find the winner of the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, if you can pass the mile and an eighth test, that's the only test I care about. If you start failing that test, then I'll start worrying about you getting the mile and a quarter. But the extra eighth of a mile, it's a guessing game. We're all guessing, and if a horse can effectively get the mile and an eighth, especially a forward mile and an eighth, being forward in those races, I think says a lot more about your stamina than like a late running mile and an eighth. I've got no problem with them going a mile and a quarter. So we'll see if Burnham Square can pass that test as the distances get a little bit longer. But as of now, he's not shown me anything that gives me any questions.
Presumably the Fountain of Youth will be next. We'll be following him. Very happy to have him in the top 10, in the money top 10, created by our friend and content producer, Eric DeCoster. He also writes for us over at inthemoneypodcast.com. Check out more great Derby content over there. Thanks so much to Eric for his help with this video. We'll have him on the podcast side soon. We'll talk about the In the Money Players podcast a little bit more in a bit. So if somebody's new in the top 10, that means someone must be out. In this case, it's Ferocious. You and I were both enthusiastic about his chances in this race. Can't help but feel a little bit disappointed. We thought the blinkers might move him forward. He checked in, did he check in? About fourth in this race. It did not seem like the Ferocious we were hoping to see. What do we think is next for this horse? I definitely think he has to be out of a Derby top 10 at this point. I'm not ruling out a rebound, but did you see any obvious excuses for Ferocious in this spot?
Well, you start running out of excuses, right? If he lost a shoe in the Hopeful. He had a weird trip in the Breeders' Futurity. He needed blinkers in the Juvenile, and even this one. Oh, now he's got everything. He's ready. He's going to turn the corner. He ranged up and was empty. I guess the answer is he looked like one of those horses that ranges and stops Maybe he wants to go a little bit shorter. Maybe that's the answer for him. Maybe the old Alan Jerkins future wager on a horse like Ferocious is what you need to start looking at, because he's not showing me anything that he wants to continue to go these longer distances, and hopefully they can get it figured out. He showed so much talent as a young horse, but he's not getting the job done as it were now.
Another thing that Eric did in this top 10 that would generate some discussion and interest is actually a horse that he chose not to move. That was Citizen Bull. He came out of the other big Derby prep this weekend, or one of the other two, the Lewis Stakes at Santa Anita. The 2-year-old champion back in action. He did the business. He got a career high fig, a 98 in his case. I'll tell you what, I agree with Eric leaving him in the number 7 hole, simply because I don't know what we learned. It did seem the team tactics were at play here. He was basically allowed to go to the front. He cruised. He didn't do anything to drop. He didn't do anything to elevate. In my opinion, he showed that he's still a horse. He showed that he's still pretty good, but I'm very happy with the decision to leave him at number 7. What did you think of Citizen Bull out west? And are we underrating him to have him only number 7 on this Derby top 10?
He's just not wowing us, right? I mean, you're used to the Baffert horses wowing. Well, the Dortmunds of the world, the American Pharaohs, the Nysoses, the Masteries, the horses that were on this trail, hitting those triple-digit buyers and really kind of running off the screen. He hasn't really done that. He's just been very workmanlike in his figures and in his performances. He's not one that I would knock by any means. I sure would love to own him, and he's one that deserves to be exactly where he's at moving forward. But I think the reason he's not there yet is because he's likely going to be bet like he is in these remaining preps and probably in the Kentucky Derby, and he's not making me warm and fuzzy yet.
I hear you. He stays at that number 7 position. If you want to follow our top 10, if you want to get free tips and analysis of prep races and enjoy all manner of good horse racing content, subscribe to the In the Money Media YouTube channel. Click that notification bell as well so you don't miss any of our YouTube exclusive content. And while you're here, drop us a comment on these videos. Give us your top 10. Tell us what we got right, what we got wrong. We've got thick skin. We can handle it. Please subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested in our content, check us out on the audio side, In the Money Players Podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Let's talk about some of the other news from the weekend, Jonathan. Captain Cook at New York City's racetrack, the Big A. This one got a 94 buyer speed figure. We were talking before about the H. Alan Jerkins. Well, this one's sire, Practical Joke, was a winner of that race. Practical Joke on top, Indian Charlie on the bottom. Doesn't scream a horse that's going to love 10 furlongs or improve for the distance for trainer Rick Dutrow. On the other hand, he's gone that 9 furlongs you mentioned you were concerned about already in February. Eric wasn't convinced enough to put Captain Cook in our Derby top 10. Perhaps he should have been. What do you think of Captain Cook and his Withers effort?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's in the right operation for Rick Dutrow, who had so much success with Big Brown, winning from that 20 post, also going on to win the Preakness, and then unfortunately all kind of fell apart at the Belmont. But I think he's in the right hands. That's the first part about it. The second thing is that he has passed that test, and he is knocking on the door of getting to those triple-digit numbers. And maybe just as he progresses, he will, whether it be Burnham Square, whether it be Citizen Bull, or a horse like Captain Cook. If they can take that next step forward, give me 6, 7 more buyer speed figure points, I can start to get really excited. But they're doing everything right. They're doing what they have to do in the moment, but they're just not over that hump quite yet. I've got no problem with Captain Cook at all.
Let's go ahead and look at the top 10 as it stands now. Couple of news and notes from horses in this field. Sovereignty finally back on the work tab over the weekend. That's good. I feel like had he not worked, he might have dropped off this top 10 for now. This is a horse that I actually had number 1 when I did my first top 10 Derby list back in November. And he certainly, well, I don't know about certainly. For me, still deserves this place in the top 10. No targeted race for him yet. We'll wait and see what that one ends up being. Just one other little piece of news. This horse was not on Eric's top 10, was on that original one that I made. Rated by Merit, going to be sidelined with an injury, will not be competing on the Triple Crown Trail. He was always going to be tested for class in these big open company stakes, but he'd run some very fast figures and is a horse to keep an eye on going forward. Lots of talented Florida breds can make their mark against open company. We'll see what happens with him when he comes back. Coming up this weekend, we've got the Sam Davis Stakes at Tampa. We'll have a preview video for that elsewhere on the channel, but it's hard not to already start thinking about the Risen Star next weekend, Jonathan, on the 15th. That would be 3 of our top 10 runners going to be appearing in there. Disco Time, Jonathan's Way, and East Ave. I'm not going to ask you to make a pick about a race that hasn't even drawn yet, but I'll ask it this way. Of the horses returning from our top 10 list on that day, is there one in particular you're looking forward to seeing how he gets on?
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan's Way's got a special place in my heart, even though they don't necessarily spell it correctly. Actually, I'm probably the one who spells it wrong. Excited to see him back. But East Avenue, I think of all the horses that are on this list, the one horse that I'm the most excited about, that I would even venture into taking a future wager on, would be East Avenue, right? Off of that poor effort in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I think he's a horse that could take a step forward. You know, the distance shouldn't be a problem for him. I love Brendan Walsh as a trainer, so he's one that I'm very excited to see back. Probably the most excited to see back so far on the early parts of this Derby trail.
Be so interesting to see if he can deliver on that early promise. Great stuff, JK. Appreciate you coming on here. And we'll remind folks one more time, we've got so much more content for you, not just on this channel, free daily tips and analysis over at inthemoneypodcast.com. And if you want the most extra podcasts, extra write-ups, inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. That's a great way you can support us and keep us bringing you more content. We will see you next time on the In the Money Media YouTube channel.